so many people are not defining how to create wealth properly. This has been on my mind recently. There's a quote I saw from Albert Einstein, and he said that if he has 60 minutes to solve a problem, he's going to spend 55 minutes truly defining the problem, and then 5 minutes actually solving the problem. So that's just a little bit of an analogy for me. And everybody thinks they want to create wealth, or they think that they can create wealth or should create wealth, whatever that is, and that's fine, but they don't understand the true problem or solution or the true foundation of wealth creation. It's one of those things that it's just, if you truly understand the basic foundational concepts, just like if you truly understand a problem, you are more likely, in my opinion, to be able to actually solve it. So I'm getting ready to go up on the whiteboard here in a little bit, and here in a minute actually, and show you and talk through a little bit about how to create wealth, and show you some examples and some things like that. But before I do that, I want to kind of define this, because creating wealth is actually very, very simple. There's a difference between simple and easy. Easy is something that anybody can do. Simple is something that anybody can understand. Now, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. Now, there are things that are simple and easy at the same time, but creating wealth is not one of them. Fortunately, though, creating wealth is very, very simple. The concepts I'm going to go over here in a minute, show on the whiteboard and walk through how to create wealth, and then how to parlay that into real estate is going to be extremely powerful for you. I've done this quite a few times, and every single time I'm get eyebrow raised and people, realizing that it is very, very simple. So excited to go through that with you all here in a minute. And then in general, we're just going to kind of break that down in as many ways as possible. So that being said, let's hop up to the whiteboard. First time we're going to try this, and we'll see how she goes. There you go. Get the speaker on here. Get this going. Boom shakalaka. All right. We good? We see me? Thumbs up. All right. So wealth creation, like I said earlier, is very, very simple. I'm going to be like staring at Shane the whole time. This is going to be great. Wealth creation, I'm talking to you, is very, very simple, but it's not easy. Wealth is created through assets. So assets are what creates wealth, whether that be business assets, like an actual business that you own. Elon Musk's wealth is through, I'm sure he owns real estate, but I think he's like doing this minimalist thing where he's selling all his real estate. But anyways, his wealth is created through his equity in Tesla, his equity in X, not just X, the actual platform, his equity in the businesses that he owns, fully or partially owns. That's where his wealth is created. You can do that through real estate or through businesses. And technically, I guess if you want to get this exactly accurate, so wealth is created through equity in assets, like just having an asset that you have a mortgage on or you have a note on if it's a business, and the business or real estate's not worth any more than the note you have on it. That's not a way to create wealth. That's a way to do it the wrong way. So creating equity in assets is the way to create wealth. I don't think anybody can argue that. Creating equity some way, somehow, is the best way to create wealth, whether that's through real estate or business. Now, if you don't have enough money to buy those assets, are you SOL, or do you have options? And that's what we're going to talk about today, is option. This is how to create wealth using none of your own money, which is an interesting concept. It's kind of what I'm known for. It's what I've done. It's what people I know have done, it's what students have done, and it's what most self-made multimillionaires and billionaires do, is they figure out how to create that wealth with none of their own money. Definition of self-made, meaning you didn't inherit it, you made it yourself, and while you do that, you still use leverage to a certain degree. So what we're going to talk about is the ABCs of wealth, okay? So ABC. Sorry, my writing is not good. You're just going to have to get used to. Should I look at both cameras or just this guy? Oh, okay. So cool. I just want to make sure. All right. So wealth creation is simple, not easy, as ABC, where A stands for assets, B stands for borrow. Again, my writing sucks, so listen as I'm speaking. C stands for cash flow. So these are the three major concepts and components that we're going to talk about when we're going to talk about creating wealth. So let's clear that out and let me show you how this actually looks. So let's put B for borrow, A for asset, C for cash flow. So again, this is very simple. We're going to build upon this. I'm going to use some business examples, then I'm going to break this down and show you how you can do it, because understanding this concept is great, and I think it will open your mind up a little bit, but understanding how this actually works for, for you, and if you're listening to this after the fact, I'll talk you through it, but understanding how this works and then understanding how to implement it are two different things. So what you do is you borrow money to buy an asset. An asset, by definition, is something that is going to produce cash and potentially, hopefully, grow in value. So you borrow money to buy an asset. You take the cash flow that asset produces and you pay back who you borrowed the money from. It's that simple. You borrow money to buy an asset. You take the cash flow from the asset to pay off who you borrowed the money from. Now let's go over some business examples, and then we'll narrow it down to real estate, because I don't know that everybody's going to start doing this technically with a business. So, like my big example I like to use is Mark Zuckerberg. So Mark Zuckerberg borrowed money from Peter Thiel and other investors, but the big main angel investor was Peter Thiel, whatever you want to call it. He borrowed money from him to make Facebook an actual business. He had started it in his dorm room with some buddies. It had a cool concept, it had some momentum, but it wasn't a business yet. They didn't have the manpower, the funding to hire more coders, more developers, and create more of a product that is eventually scalable and sellable or monetizable. So Zuckerberg borrowed money from Peter Thiel to make Facebook more of a business. Then he took the ad revenue, aka cash flow, to pay back Peter Thiel. Now, that Peter Thiel got some ownership in Facebook, so good negotiation on his part, but not everybody that invested in Facebook got ownership at the beginning. So, in general, he took somebody else's money to make a business more monetizable, took the monetizableness from that business to pay off who he borrowed the money from. Similarly with X, when Elon Musk bought X, he borrowed money to buy it. $44 billion famously that he bought X for. Now, he used some of his own money, not a ton. He used some of his stock and leveraged some of his stock in Tesla, but then he got a ton of investors. That there's a whole thing online where you can see all the investors and all the people that spent hundreds of millions and tens of millions of dollars to invest in X and invest in Elon, honestly. And then he borrowed money from Bank of America and a couple other banks, but Bank of America was a big lender on this. So even Elon Musk, who could have written a $44 billion check or cashed out stock that were worth that much amount, he didn't do that. He took money and he's trying to make X something completely different. We won't get into that a little bit, but this is how the world works. If you don't have enough money to buy something, you can borrow money to buy that something. The credit business, the debt business, the leveraging business is how the world's economy runs. That's how every country, every business, pretty much for the most part, gets their start or gets their growth by borrowing money that they don't have, and they tie it to the asset that they're borrowing money to improve or grow or start. So that's the general concepts, A, B, C. You borrow money to buy an asset, take the cash flow from the asset to pay off who you borrowed the money from. So that's the simple part of it. Now again, it's not easy, but it is a way to make this whole thing work. So what I want to do now is talk about how you can actually do this, because I understand this is a cool concept. This is probably something that you either thought of or you haven't thought of, but I would assume to some degree it makes sense, but what do you do with this information? So let's talk about how you do this with real estate, because I think everybody can agree that real estate is a great wealth creation tool. Putting your money in the stock market is not a way to create wealth. It's a way to get a little bit of potential active income. I actually just saw a stat. This is gonna blow the young cats' minds over there in the corner, but of the S&P 500, do you know how many companies in the S&P 500 have been around for 75 years? Out of the 500 companies in the S&P 500, how many do you think? What's your guess? One. one company, GE, has been on the S&P 500 for the last 75 years, which is just going to show that unless you're investing completely a blanket account in all the stocks in the S&P 500, which some people are, but most people have their specific stocks, that's not a secure way to do anything, because they go in and out of the S&P 500 because companies are ran by people, and people make dumb decisions, and people don't adapt. Real estate there's no emotion involved. It's siding, it's brick, it's mortar, it's shingles, it's doors. It is an actual hard, tangible asset that's ran hopefully probably just by you or one management company. So there's less human error to go into it. So that's why real estate is the best choice. That's why it's the best place to get started. I would suggest getting involved in real estate, then maybe potentially moving on to businesses. But the best, simplest, easiest thing to do is to start with real estate. All right, so how this works with real estate is you borrow money from a private lender. We'll get into this a little bit here in a minute. Hard money lender, and then local bank in a certain order to buy the asset, which is going to be a house, a rental house, to be a little bit more specific. Then you take the cash flow, aka rent, and equity that's created over a short period of time to pay back who you borrowed the money from, the private lender and hard money lender through the equity, and then you pay the bank back through the rent. So a little more convoluted. We're going to work through that, but basically when it comes to real estate, it's a few more steps, but it's just so much simpler because everybody needs real estate. I think the real estate industry is like 46 trillion. It is ginormous. So you borrow money to buy a rental house for simplicity purposes. Then you take the cash flow from that rental house to pay off who you borrowed the money from. At the end of the day, you own that rental house, which is an asset, which over time equity is created through, which what does equity and assets do? Builds wealth. You were going to say that, weren't you, Shane? All right, cool. All right, now let's talk about the method used to do this. It is a very, very, pretty simple method. It's not quite as easy as ABC. There's a few more letters involved, but let's break this down. I love this method. I have used this burrs method that I'm getting ready to break down for you to buy 150 single-family houses, 6 apartment complexes, 3 self-storage facilities, and a hotel and a commercial building that we're in. I have used this method to buy all of those things. So this isn't your grandpa's burr method. This is the burrs method with an S. This is a way to buy any real estate asset you want using none of your own money. Now, of course, you have to buy the asset at a discount, which we're going to get into. Of course, you have to manage the asset well. But if you buy this asset right and manage this process well, you will be able to create wealth through real estate using none of your own money. So all real estate investing deals, whether you're flipping it or you're keeping it as a rental, need 2 things. You need a distressed house, and you need a money lender on the initial side. So to keep this simple, let's say this is a private lender. Everybody on here knows how to find private lenders. I have a ton of content on social media how to find private lenders. If you ever after this want to go over to Instagram and shoot me a message, I'll send you a training on private lenders. But private lenders are pretty easy to find if you know where to look. Just very few people know where to look. So let's say we have a private lender and we find a distressed property. Okay, we're talking concepts here. Don't want to get into too much of the nitty gritty on each little piece of this. Let's get clear on the bigger picture. So let's say you can buy a house for $150,000 to buy. After looking at pictures, getting bids, talking to other investors, it needs about $40,000 worth of work. So what you need to buy this property is $190,000. That's what you need to buy and fix up the property. Now, you go to a private lender, and you can again do a ton of different options, but let's just stick with the private lender for simplicity purposes. Your private lender writes you a check for $190,000. You then go write the title company a check for $150,000, and then you write checks basically to contractors to rehab the property for another $40,000. So you borrow $190,000 from a private lender, and you utilize that to buy and repair the property. So now the house is fixed up. You still owe the private lender money. We're going to get him or her their money back very, very soon. They didn't do it out of the kindness of their heart. They want their money back plus interest. So now that you have a fixed up property that is beautifully rehabbed, you get the property rented. you start to produce that cash flow that we talked about in that ABC. Now, the beautiful thing about today's market and the world that we're living in today is there are so many options. Real estate is so powerful. So there are so many options when it comes to renting the property. You can, if it's the right area, the right location, the right township, you can rent out on a short-term basis. You can rent this dang thing out on a weekend or weekly basis on Airbnb. More management, but way more cash flow. So that's an option to get that cash flow where you need it to be because interest rates are a little bit higher. The thing that I'm super excited about going forward is midterm rentals. You can rent these properties out on a midterm basis to traveling nurses, corporate leases, insurance displacements. There's, 2 to 3 million needs right now for midterm rentals, and there's about 200,000 supply. There's about 200,000 worth of supply of midterm rentals. So the demand is 2 to 3 million and the supply is 200,000. That's why you can cash flow, and that's why you have a really good option to get double the rent that you get on a long-term basis, which is the other option. You can rent it out on a 12, 24-month lease to market rent on Zillow or to Section 8. Doesn't really matter. Either way, you're getting that long-term tenant. So you have options to rent the rental property out to start to produce that cash flow. With me so far? You borrowed money to buy and fix up a property. You got the property rented out to whatever is the best renter to you, and then now's when we start to do the fancy footwork shuffle. So this is the refinance step. This is when you take your fixed up rental property to a small local bank, okay? Now that small local bank will write you a check for up to 80% of the appraised value. Now, you bought this property at a discount because it was sad and distressed. You fixed it up, so you added a ton of value. If you ran your numbers right, did everything properly, this property, and this is a real life example, we're rounding a little bit, but in general, the numbers are all even out to some real examples we've done recently. The property appraises and is worth $250,000, okay? So you took the property and you took it to a bank and they appraised it and they wrote you a check for 80% of the appraised value. 80% of $250,000 is $200,000. So the bank literally will hand you a cashier's check. I'm telling you, there's so much money sitting on the sidelines waiting for this, you just have to get the deal. So they'll write you a check for $200,000. You take that $200,000 check and you pay back your private money lender their $190,000 that they paid you, plus, for the simplicity purposes again, $10,000 in interest on this deal. So the private lender's happy now because the private lender gave you $190,000, didn't have to lift a finger, do any rehabbing, negotiating, any managing contractors, nothing, and then you gave them a check back for $200,000 5-6 months later. It's a really, really good return for them. They're happy, they're paid off. They now have the appetite and ability to do this again with you. That's the repeatability factor and scalability factor of this. Now, you do owe your tenant, or you do owe the rent, spoiler alert, the rent, you do owe the bank $200,000. So you owe them that, they gave you a check for that, but now it's a loan, you pay them back over the next 25, 30 years. Fortunately, you're collecting rent because you got the property rented before you took it to the bank, and the rent pays back the bank every single month, plus any other own expenses, plus a little bit of positive cash flow left over, depending on which renter you actually get into place there. So it's a way to, we'll get to scale here in a second, but it's a way to own one asset, one rental property, so you have this nice fixed up rental property, this happy property that is going to create wealth for you. It's going to create wealth for you because over time, that property is going to go up in value. You're not going to have to do a thing. You're going to have to maintain it with the tenant's rent, but that property is going to go up in value over time. Real estate doubles in value every 15 years, a minimum of double in value. So real estate, so that property is going to go up in value. It's not like picking and choosing which of the S&P 500 companies are going to remain around for 15 or 20 years, because that's a revolving door. Real estate's not a revolving door. So that property is going to go up in value in 15-year time span. It may dip, it may fluctuate a little bit, but overall, the aggregate's going to be a lot higher than what it is today. So the property is going to go up in value, which creates equity for you, which creates wealth for you. The other beautiful thing is you have a mortgage on the property, so you have debt. The debt is getting paid down by the tenant. So you are getting double the equity because the property goes up in value over time, and every single month, whether the value fluctuates or not, the tenant is paying down the principal balance on the mortgage plus all owning expenses. Then you get tax-free, or then you get tax-free cash flow if you're depreciating this and utilizing the tax benefits. So it's called the passive wealth trifecta, I like to call it. You get property growth, debt pay down plus cash flow all at the same time, and then to top it all off, you get the tax, you get a sheltered tax, asset. So over time, it creates a lot of value. Let me show you kind of numbers, what those means, then we'll get into scale. So the property that we just talked about is worth $250K today. All right, you owe $200,000 on it. I don't know why I make my twos different, but I did. So you have $50K in equity today. That's pretty cool. It was hard work getting this property. I understand your first rental property is going to be crazy hard. You're going to have to work really hard to negotiate, get the deal. You're going to screw up. There's going to be headaches and issues, and that is why that's why we have a community and a mentorship, because this is really hard, and we help people make it a little bit easier. But regardless whether you are in my community or any community or not, it's going to be a lot of work. But let me just show you why it's worth it. First off, you're 50K richer. 50K equity off the bat. You didn't put 50 grand cash into it, but you got 50 grand equity. And I told you real estate doubles in value every 15 years. So 15 years from now, this $250,000 property is going to be worth $500,000. So it's going to go up in value. It may be worth $265 next year, then it may go down to $258, then it may go up to $270, $280, down to $275, but overall it's going to go up in value and double. But the other side of it is you're getting, I always think of one of those math problems in high school or college where they're like, you have a starting point here, one train moves this way at this speed, the other train moves this way at this speed. How much distance is created? And I've never got those right, but it just goes to show that if one thing is helping you, you'll get decent growth. But if you have two things helping you at the same time, it can double or triple your growth. So again, this property is getting to get paid down to conservatively $100,000. So your 50K in equity that you got using none of your own money will easily turn into a minimum of 400K in equity in just 15 years, which I know 15 years isn't a short period of time. These guys in the corner have been alive about that long. However, it is pretty much a guarantee that it's going to happen. And it's one of those things where the average IRA and 401k combined don't make up $400,000. So people work for a company for 35, 40 years, and sometimes their IRA and 401k don't even equal $400,000. Obviously, sometimes they do, but a majority of the time they don't. Or especially if you're, 30 and you do this, and by the time you're 45, you're not going to get 400K in those things. So that is the beauty of this. You can do this multiple times with as many rental properties as you want, but $400,000 plus cash flow along the way is the goal. And obviously, you extrapolate this out another 15 years. Get to 30 years out, it's worth $1 million, and you're going to owe zero. So you're going to have $1 million equity. So you're going to be a millionaire, which in 30 years is not going to get you super far, but you're going to be a millionaire in 30 years, and with your other investments and your other things that you're doing, and your job and your IRA or 401k that you do have, and your personal house, and maybe you do this 2 or 3 times, you're going to be sitting very, very good and be able to really, really enjoy your retirement, or retire early if you do this multiple times. All right, so that all being said, that's great to do one time, and one time does make an impact, as I showed you. But if you want to scale, I do have a quick method that I want to show you before we get into the hot topics of the day and kind of into my first deal. So there is a process that I have utilized to scale my companies. I didn't really know I was doing this the entire time. I figured it out as I went and kind of was intentional with this as we grew. But if you want to scale any business, these are ways to do it specifically for real estate, but this translates to other businesses. You need to I created an acronym. For the scale, you need to create systems around every single step. If you create systems, the scaling means bigger, better, faster, stronger, more, right? So if you want to scale your rental properties, you need to create systems around buying houses. You need to create systems around rehabbing houses so you can be more efficient and do 6 in a year rather than 4 in a year, because you got efficient and you turn them quicker. You need to create systems around rehabbing or around renting. You need to get the property rented quickly so you can collect cash, so you can do the refinance, so you can reuse that money and recycle that money. And then of course you need to create systems around refinancing and different entities to refinance with. So create systems around the process to scale. You need to get involved in some type of coaching, whether it be like a community that you're involved in, like a free real estate investing meetup, you need to get involved in coaching, preferably pay for it to somebody. I don't know anybody that's moderately successful even to greatly successful that doesn't pay to be around other successful people or learn from other successful people. The name of the game, there's no shortcut to wealth except following others' proven path. And then the A stands for action. You have to go out and take action. And yeah, that goes without saying, but does it? Because you're not going to learn enough sitting on the sidelines. You're not going to learn enough by watching videos or listening to my podcast, YouTube, getting my book, my book, Own Your Freedom. That's all great, but you're not going to learn unless you're actually doing it. So if you want to scale, you have to actually do it and be involved in it. The L stands for lead flow. Whether you're talking, a lawn care business or real estate investing business, you need more leads. So you need to focus on creating leads to fill up your funnel. And then the E is extra funding. Not only does it make the word scale, not scalp, by putting funding, extra funding is important because you need multiple funding sources. Extra. You can't scale with one private lender. You need multiple private money lenders, hard money lenders, lines of credit, things like that to really scale this. And then you need extra funding on the refinance step. Small local banks have legal lending limits. They can legally lend you, so you need multiple funding sources at all of the steps. So creating wealth is not easy, it's not easy, but it is simple. It's something that takes time, but we're creating wealth here, not widgets, is what I tell my students all the time. Yes, this is going to take some work. Yes, this is going to require you to do things a little bit differently. Yes, it's going to require you to put in extra effort here and maybe sacrifice this or that, but it's worth it because it is the most proven, consistent path to creating wealth. You're not creating a system and prioritizing yourself and you're not like prioritizing and changing and taking this big risk on this altcoin or something, or you're not getting into e-commerce or something like that. It works for some, but not all, and it's not proven. It hasn't been around that long. Real estate's been around as long as people have been around. So real estate's a proven something that everybody needs, and if you can latch onto that by creatively using other people's money to create that asset that creates that equity, that creates that wealth, that's something that we all can sink into. That's why I have 3 million followers on social media, because I'm just a normal dude from the Midwest, middle class, that's been able to create a lot of really cool things because I understand the ABCs of wealth and the properly leveraged concepts that we all can utilize. This isn't something that only few people can do. Anybody watching this or listening to this can do this. Now, of course, it does take some time, and some people's paths will be quicker than others. Some people will do this in 3 months. We have students buy 5 properties in the first 5 weeks, and we have students buy none in the first 5 months. So it all depends on your goals, your time, your ambition, your drive. But if you have those things and you have a obstacle of not a great job or not a ton of time or maybe not the best credit score, this can all be cobbled together and work for pretty much anybody.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like button, comment with something you learned, and make sure to subscribe to this channel. We give away more free advice on how to create wealth based on things we actually do every single day than any other channel on YouTube. Make sure to share this with a friend because our mission is to inspire you to think differently about freedom.